3, 2, 1.
How about we do it again?
6, 7, 4, 3, 2, 1. I think I fallen.
Okay, let's try one more
I
time.
definitely.
Ready?
I can move you. Making review. Making review.
Say 6,
6,
5,
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Hello and welcome to episode 79 of Rank and Review. If last episode was our road trip, then this is where we arrived. And we arrived in some mountains in the beautiful Canmore region of Alberta, in my home country of Canada. Yes, believe it or not, your host and random Canadian Larry Parsons lives in Canada. But I was joined on my vacation by my dear friend Scott Lehman to discuss Remakes. I wish that you could see the beautiful setting that we are surrounded by as we record the first half of this podcast, because it was absolutely amazing. So big thanks to Scott Lehman for coming back to the show. The last time we heard from him was when we did Slasher Cinema, A History. And as usual, I want you listeners to understand that you're going to be hearing spoilers for the 6 films discussed, and you'll likely be privy to some coarse language. But hey, what are you going to do? Please send your feedback to rankandreview@gmail.com. That's ranknrevieu@gmail.com. And if you wouldn't mind, if iTunes was your thing, putting a positive review, 4 or 5-star review on iTunes for the podcast is super helpful, you guys. Throw me that like on Facebook, get that other friend of yours that loves movies onto the podcast, and you'd just be doing me such a favor. Okay, enough of this nonsense. Let's get to the business at hand. Let's talk about remakes. I don't think you and I will have any trouble talking about these horror movies. I really don't.
No, it'll probably be all right. Especially with the Baileys. And
Yeah, Baileys, coffee.
Baileys in the bud.
Mountains. We're doing well. So I'm sitting on a deck in a nice mountain resort in Alberta, Canada, and Scott Lehman has returned to Rank and Review. That's right, we started just like that.
Wow.
It's beautiful out, the sun is going down, there's birds flying about our heads.
There's Baileys in my
Baileys
cup.
and coffee, and last time you were with me, we did Slasher Cinema History, and it was an epic episode. It was the longest episode, still to this day, longest episode of the series. But I think of high quality. So unfortunately, because of that, you've raised the stakes. You've made this a high pressure situation. Now you got to try and meet that.
Well,
do you remember why you chose Remakes?
Well, before we do that, I want to mention something about the last time I was privileged enough to do this.
Okay.
Yeah, we did the slasher films, and after some time has passed now, I can say I may have ranked them incorrectly.
Uh-oh.
I may have possibly put Friday the 13th higher than maybe it should have, and I may have put Halloween lower than it should have. So just putting that out there. However, I stay Texas Chainsaw Massacre still at the top.
Still number 1.
And I just want to defend myself because I'm a chainsaw guy, and I know there are other chainsaw guys out there that's their Bible.
Yeah.
So, but after listening to your Halloween retrospective, that's when I thought, you know what, Halloween really should have been higher. So I will tip my hat to that.
So
I may have been incorrect. I was also impaired. But,
Yes.
and
well,
I got a thing that may happen again tonight.
the
so.
alcohol is flowing, and we're just starting. I'm so thrilled that you came out to meet me during my vacation to do this.
Out in the mountains.
So first and foremost, thank you for doing that. And you're ignoring your family, which is nice.
Yeah, that's a pleasure.
It's a great vacation.
With remakes, though, I chose remakes because I think remakes get some hate Inherently, they make a lot of money. People go see the remake, but it's cool to hate the remake.
Absolutely.
It's cool to say, "Oh, that sucked because it wasn't the original, and it's not as good as the original." I have a thing I say that there's a lot of cover songs.
Right.
So I look at a movie. This is like a cover movie.
Right.
It's like a cover song. You take a classic rock, maybe a classic song, change the tempo, change the rhythm, and it's got some of the same lyrics, but at the end, it's a different song.
I have to admit, I used to be that guy that was like, fuck, why are they remaking everything? Like, is there no original screenplays out there? Like, seriously? But, and, you know, I've said it many times on the podcast before, if you're going to remake a movie, why not remake a movie that had a good premise but a flawed execution, right? Why take a classic and, like, why put yourself up to that, right? The answer is, of course, money.
I agree. The remake has a built-in audience because
Absolutely. And even the people, like you say, who will hate it will go and watch it.
Yeah. It's like a new Evil Dead movie. As soon as I saw that trailer, I said, I love the Evil Dead franchise. And I thought I have to go see that movie the day it comes out. and I did. But, yeah, you got to look at it as its own beast, I think.
Yeah.
There's different kind of there's remakes where they take the same story, the same characters. What seems to be big now is the reboot or a remake of the idea, such as Dawn of the Dead, which is not one of the films we're doing today.
No.
But I just want to mention it's, other than the title and the fact there's zombies in the mall.
Yeah, that's about it.
There's no similarities in the story at all. It's you could have just called it Zombie Mall and make a new movie, but people would say, "Oh, that's a ripoff of Dawn of the Dead."
Yeah, but they call it Dawn of the Dead.
Yeah, so it's a remake, and
that's a remake that I'm quite positive about. Even though they stripped the social commentary out of it, it still worked as a very exciting action thriller type of horror movie. So I'm all for that. I've softened a little bit, like I've said, and now I'm like, well, no, there's not a lot of people who obsess over movies to the same degree I do, right? So maybe if they don't watch the nouveau Friday the 13th, they'll go through their lives not knowing who Jason Voorhees is. And that's sad to me. You need to know who Jason Voorhees is. Come on.
I agree. That makes it makes sense to do certain. Or you could just do endless sequels of the same thing. But I mean, the idea is it's interesting. I get curious to see what another director's take on Friday the 13th would be, or it's basically a retelling, a different perspective of the story.
I really think that, like, Michael Myers, Jason Voorhees, Freddy Krueger, you know, there are new Universal monsters in a lot of ways. They're the new Wolfman, Dracula, and Frankenstein.
Sure.
Right? They're gonna, like, Universal Pictures is going to try and reinvent those creatures right away here. But I think that while still, you know, I want to see new horror, I want to see fresh, I would like to see new genre figures rising. But if you have a tentpole as strong and as, you know, a big a box office draw as Friday the 13th, I'm hard-pressed to say, how dare you make another one, right?
Yeah, it's not that sacred ground.
I'm a hypocrite because I will watch it. If I hate it, I will watch it. I will buy a copy of it, and I will bitch about it on the internet. I'm part of the problem.
And it's interesting you've said that before about take a flawed movie, or maybe a movie that had an idea but not a budget.
Absolutely.
What can they do now with money behind it? Like there's some that you say don't do, like The Exorcist, for example. I don't see that being a successful remake. If they, I guess they're doing a TV show now.
Jaws. If some dude says I'm going to remake Jaws, he has to have balls the size of the Grand Canyon. Right?
Yeah, I can't pick either of those two movies. I cannot see that being scary or working. I mean, who knows? Maybe. But there's other films.
Tried to remake Psycho very unsuccessfully, as we discussed.
Yeah, we did. Yeah, and I don't know. Take a movie from 1981 that had a budget of $30,000, maybe, and an interesting idea,
and do it for $100 million.
Yeah, and see what that does. Maybe. I don't know, anything in mind? You want to remake?
Well, I can think of 6 remakes that it would be worth talking about. I am the Sultan of Segway. Here we go. We are going to look at the remake of The Crazies, which is a George Romero film from the 70s. And The Crazies and The Hitcher are probably the two more, I guess, obscure titles, maybe. A lot of people might have watched The Crazies or The Hitcher not realizing those were remakes, but they are both, in fact, remakes. Last time you were here, we discussed Friday the 13th. We're going to discuss the remake of Friday the 13th. Evil Dead, you mentioned, we're going to talk about. We're going to obsess over a shirtless Ryan Reynolds in the Amityville Horror.
Sweet.
And a movie that I watched for the first time with you, My Bloody Valentine, 3D. So is there anything else to say before we get started, or should we let this party get started?
That depends how much Bailey's we got left. Oh, a lot. Okay, yeah, we can.
Well, we got one review here, I think.
We can do it.
This is an amazing house. You are going to love it.
Holy, this is the deal of a lifetime. So, what's the catch?
There was a crime, a murder.
In the house?
Several people, a family.
Accused claims he heard voices coming from within the house.
Well, houses don't kill people. To a perfect house and to a perfect family.
So, once upon a time, Larry read a book by Jay Anson called The Amityville Horror, and it was terrifying. It was a scary book, I'm not going to lie. I didn't believe a word of it. But as a basic ghost story about a family that moves into a new house and gets chased away by spirits, I mean, I thought the book was quite frightening. So it's puzzling to me that the remake of The Amityville Horror bears such a small resemblance to the book. The major points which the original film covered, like the priest being scared out of the house and just certain set pieces with chopping wood and the father figure going crazy, was kept. But the dynamics of the haunting were much different.
Yeah.
And I would argue kind of worse than the book. It doesn't necessarily mean that it's a bad movie, but I would be lying if I didn't say I was disappointed. In the book, Jody, the imaginary friend, is not a precocious little girl who was the murder victim. She sees a pig. She says that her invisible friend is a pig named Jody. And for some reason, that's creepier to me.
See, me, I've never read the book.
Right.
So
You don't have any baggage.
No,
at all.
I've never learned to read, so I just I've watched the movie, but no, I never read the book, so I don't know how much the book compares to the original.
Right.
Is it quite faithful, or?
The original, I would argue, is closer,
Okay.
but both of them are kind of Cole's Notes versions, I would say. Yes.
Okay, yeah. So all I'm going off is the comparison from the, was it
1979, I think.
Okay, yeah. So the movie version. Do we want to say something about who's in this?
Sure.
This film.
Deadpool himself, Canadian superstar Ryan Reynolds, plays George Lutz, and Melissa George, who is a totally hot British actress. And if you ever get the chance to see a movie called Triangle starring Melissa George, please
Okay.
do it. Please do it.
But you're forgetting who gets really first billing in this movie. Not Ryan Reynolds, but Ryan Reynolds' abs.
Yes.
Right? Second billing is his beard.
Yep.
Both features I found a little bit distracting. But
If you like Ryan Reynolds and if you like his chiseled abs, then this movie was made for you. And hey, you know what? Ladies are allowed to have eye candy too, but it's one of the first times where I was really noticing it into a distracting level.
I think he was too chiseled for this.
who
If
he's playing. He's
yeah,
like
for George Lutz.
He's a dad, you know. He's
Supposed
got
to be
3
just
kids,
the
past his
all-American regular
prime.
guy, but there's nobody that I've ever met, and I've gone to America. Nobody there,
Nobody.
regular dad looks like that.
No.
And I guess the beard, it seemed almost for some. I'm not sure why I found that distracting, but
The
maybe
actual
because
dude
you're
had a beard.
right.
Josh,
I think they
or,
just
James
tried.
Brolin wore the beard in the original. I think he was just, I'm George Lutz, ergo beard.
Yeah, I don't know. It seemed like they were trying too hard to just make him not look as much like the lovable Ryan Reynolds that we know, and
Yeah.
the goofy guy from whatever he's been in. But
Van Wilder
Yeah,
or
exactly.
whatever. Just Friends, which was shot in Saskatchewan. Yeah, there's other supporting roles. Chloe Grace Moretz, who, you know, as a hit girl,
exactly. Yep.
and is in lots of horror movies.
I'm-
She's not even 20, and she's been in like a dozen horror movies, little bitch.
I wanted to say something about her, and I'm a big fan of hers actually, and I don't mean this to sound creepy at all, but no,
It
because
is
this
a little,
was
but-
her first film, right?
I think there's one before this. Yeah.
Okay. I find her very fascinating, interesting to watch, just as far as a child actor, and then watching her. I mean, obviously, Hit Girl. That's a role that she was.
Made an impression.
She was 11 when she did that.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's
Very
not
violent.
everybody can do that. That was. But I got a feeling that she's going to be someone that we're watching
She's
for a
the
long
new Jodie
time.
Foster.
And I think she'll be in movies that I'll watch, like the type of movie that I will actually go to see. So
She has good taste.
Yeah, it's not your usual child actor kind of role she's taken with Amityville Horror, Kick-Ass, the Carrie remake, and
Yeah. So all the ingredients are here. The screenplay was done by, I just said his name, but I'm forgetting, Scott Kozar, and we're going to talk about him again. He also wrote the remake to the Crazies, and he wrote a really interesting thriller called The Machinist, starring Christian Bale. If you ever get a chance to see it, it's quite interesting. So I don't mind the screenwriter, but this is not his finest hour, I don't think. For me, it's the set pieces that, like, there's moments that I would say, that's a great moment. It's kind of worth checking out the movie for that. And the best example of that, there's a couple of them, the best example of that for me is the sequence with Rachel Nichols as the babysitter.
when she's in the closet.
She gets locked in the closet.
And that babysitter, how many babysitters have you had? They all kind of come to the house that dressed
Just like
dressed
a
like
total
she is.
70s slut. I love it.
Yeah. I don't remember that in the original.
Nope.
Quite low. Didn't she have like big braces? And
Yeah, no, they went a different direction with this. But they take it to another degree. Here's the thing about the Amityville horror that is true and that is actually chilling. The house that the DeFeo family moved into, the Lutz family moved into, had previously been owned by the DeFeo family. The eldest son of the family suffered some kind of schizophrenic episode and executed everybody in the house. And they were able to get the house for a good deal on the house because of the troubled history of it. All of that is true. Depending on who you talk to, the rest of it is or isn't.
Right.
But they, instead of, like I said, using the lever into the supernatural of this invisible plaything, pig, or whatever that was supposed to be, they have actually a little girl, one of the victims from the DeFeo family. And her role in the movie is strange to me. I really don't even understand if she is friend or foe.
yeah, they kind of flip-flop a bit, hey?
Yeah.
To me, I think she was... she seemed friendly, but she wanted that little girl to stay. And,
She was lonely there and scared there.
Maybe because she wanted her to jump off the roof to go see Daddy, and
Yeah.
then she can stay and play forever. And
There's something really horrible about that scene in the closet with the babysitter, where not only does the babysitter, who knew the DeFeos, see the ghost of the little girl, but the little girl grabs her hand and forces her finger inside the bullet
it doesn't make a
wound.
lot of sense, but it's creepy as fuck, isn't it?
Creepy as fuck, but why?
Yeah.
Why?
Yeah,
Like,
I hear you.
there's another scene where Ryan Shirtless Reynolds is making love to Melissa, unfortunately not Shirtless George, and by a last name, by the way, Melissa George. But the little girl appears to him while he's making love to his wife, and she appears to hang herself.
Yeah, that's right.
Why? She was shot, and why is I didn't understand it. It was a weird thing that happened. It was kind of a creepy, misdirection. Oh, we're in a sexy scene. Oh, no, we're in a scary scene. But it just seemed random.
There's another scene like that it kind of works for me. It's when the little boy wakes up in the middle of the night to go pee, and that
Solid
scene,
jump scare.
That
Yeah.
scene works for me because you've
Everybody's
been that
done
little
that.
boy. You're going to the bathroom. It's dark in the house. You hear a creak down the hall, and you run really quick
Yeah.
and what it shows in the mirror. He's peeing. He washes his hands, and then the camera pans, and you see a ghost or a demon or something really.
Something was watching him the
and
whole time.
it's a good jump scare for the audience, but the
He
kid doesn't
doesn't
see
see
this,
it.
so that's a scare that's only for us, but it doesn't really hold anything in the story or make
And a
any
lot of
real
time,
sense.
yeah, a lot of time that feels cheap to me. But when it's done well, a good jump scare is a good jump scare.
Sure.
Like, I'll take it.
And in this one, when the walls bleed further to the end, I don't believe the family sees that either in the remake.
Yeah, I think
that's during the night or.
Yeah. Again, there's so many different versions of the events as to what is true, what isn't. We just sort of have to take this particular packaging of it. Yeah, so I guess you're right. I didn't really consider the roof scene. I guess it was another child in peril scene, but I think you're right. I think that this little girl, Jodie, was trying to get Chloe Grace Moretz to commit suicide. So
But
I
why
guess
she would-
that officially makes her a villain.
But why she would, show herself hanging at the foot of the bed too.
Why?
I never really understood that either. Or
It's just a strange random choice.
I know she never liked the babysitter, so
Yeah.
maybe she wanted to mess with her a bit there. But
Oh yeah, and like if this was a
I
true
mean-
story, that babysitter is still in a fucking psychiatric unit. That would mess me up pretty bad.
now, since we're talking about Jodie, and
Yeah.
you mentioned this, the whole pig thing.
Mm-hmm.
In the original movie, she appears as what I always thought was kind of a
couple
Poor-
of red Christmas lights.
Well, when George is outside, he looks in the upstairs window and he sees this bad projection effect of a pig, some sort of pig thing. In all honesty, that effect never really worked for me. I think I like it being a dead girl better myself, and this is going to anger some, but I know you read message boards where people say, no, Jodie's a pig, it has to be a pig. That doesn't really make a lot of sense to me why
It would be a pig either.
and why she would want to play with a
pig.
demonic pig. But
Well, I don't know why it struck me reading the book. It's because it's just something a little kid would say that you would dismiss.
I guess
I have an imaginary friend. It's a
I can
pig
also
named Jodie.
I can also say, even if I like the idea of it being a dead girl better, maybe we saw a little bit too much of her too soon, and it took some of the fear away for sure.
The other problem, jumping right to the very last stinger moment of the film, is that the DeFeos don't last a month in the house, and that's part of the truth of this quote-unquote true story. But when they leave the house, we see the little girl ghost alone again. And then these like demonic entity arms grab her and suck her into the floor in this sort of last-ditch jump scare. My question is, if she's a villain, you know, if she's a terrible, evil little girl ghost, do we care about that? Like, it was all it was a Buddha to roll credits on.
At the same time, they did that as well in the closet when the parents came home, and there were some arms reaching through the roof holding Jodie up, and which again.
So she was being tormented by them too. So again, I wanted to be sympathetic to her, but I couldn't be because she was also kind of evil.
So I mean, it seems a little bit like we're taking little turds on the movie, but I'm gonna say that I think it does improve in some ways over the original.
In many ways.
And this is where the blasphemy comes in. I don't myself consider the original Amityville Horror to be the masterpiece that many do.
No.
I do have the movie, and it's good for what it is, but I think it's overly long, and I don't think it's that well acted. Some of the effects are kind of scary. I mean, it's pretty cheesy at times. The overacting of in the role of Mr. Lutz,
James Brolin,
right?
Josh Brolin's daddy.
Sometimes it's a little tough to.
Yeah, he
to
gets
handle.
he goes over the line, and I think if you asked him, he would admit that. The thing about the Amityville Horror, the movie, is that it was a monster hit. And because it was a monster hit, it's considered a classic. It's a movie that everybody went to see because the book was huge. I honestly think, like, this book is very influential. Like, Spielberg himself, like, he read Amityville Horror, and then he wrote Poltergeist. He said, me too, right?
Yeah.
So it's an influential work. And I think that it was one of these things. It was a hot novel, and it was going to be a hot movie, even if it wasn't that great. And I think that if you're honest, the original isn't that great. But I think that if I'm honest, the remake ain't that great either. But if I'm going to choose of the two, which ones I'm going to watch, I might watch the remake.
And I might too. I mean, having said that, this pile blasphemy on top of blasphemy. Amityville 2 is even better than the first Amityville, which I just want, just because who knows when I'll be here and again, and if I'm ever reviewing another Amityville horror movie. But I want to say Amityville 2 is in my opinion, the strongest of the whole franchise.
Yeah,
But even though we're not talking about that, but
it's been so long since I've seen it.
Just wanted to throw that out there, just to rankle some.
Of the Platinum Dune series of remakes, they did Texas Chainsaw, they did the Amityville Horror, they did Nightmare on Elm Street, you know? This one's one of the ones that is fairly inoffensive. It seems most of the times with Platinum Dunes, they either do quite well or they drop the ball almost entirely.
Yeah, they take key ideas from the movie and rework a story around it. Like my favorite scene from the first one was the flies in the room with the priest. This one happens
later in the movie.
And I was almost wondering, are they going to have this scene the first time I was watching? I love that scene when the flies are in the window and the priest freaks out and they get out.
One of the few genuinely chilling moments.
Yeah, and when it did happen, they changed how it happened. I don't think it was quite as effective.
A little more CG, a little less.
Right.
Yeah.
But it
Philip
still
Baker
had.
Hall, it was okay.
Yeah, and that's what I kind of look for in certain remakes is my favorite scenes. How are they going to rework that scene into the movie? And so that was one scene I was kind of waiting for that they did include in there.
I would say if you're a fan of the haunted house genre, you could do worse than the remake of Amityville Horror. And if you're a fan of Ryan Reynolds' abs, this is the greatest movie ever made.
For sure. Yeah, absolutely. It's bonerific.
Yeah. So I think that everyone will just have to make their own minds up.
I mean, yeah, it's a slicker made movie than the original for sure. I mean, time has passed and there's money behind it and it's better quality, I guess. But then again, I think all 6 of these films as far as the money behind it, it's going to be, they're all produced very highly.
Arguably, they were all, quote, better made simply for the fact that they had way more to work with. But
and that
doesn't necessarily make
that does not make a better movie, right?
Absolutely.
Did you know a young boy drowned here? He wasn't a very good swimmer. The counselors weren't paying attention. He should have been watched every minute. You see, he was my son. His name was Jason. And today is his birthday.
So last time you were here, we did talk about the original Friday the 13th. And I was quite favorable of it, while at the same time sort of measured. Like, it's well made. It's a solid slasher movie. It's an origin story, right?
Yeah.
And one of the very few smart things that this remake of Friday the 13th did, if you ask me, is not redo the origin story. They knew that the fans didn't want to see Michael Myers' mom, or sorry, Jason Voorhees' mom, killing all of these people. Like that's not the story that they wanted. They want to see the hockey mask. They want to see the machete.
Yeah, that would have been a mistake to do it. I mean, right there we can say this is not a remake of Friday the 13th. Because
it's almost another alternate universe Friday the 13th or something.
A retelling of, I think it's got bits of the first four.
Yeah.
Friday the 13th kind of mixed in.
Some would argue they took their favorite bits of the first four movies and sort of, did a cut and paste job in some respects. The director here, Marcus Nispel, is almost specializes, it seems, in remakes. He did the Texas Chainsaw Massacre remake. He did this one. He did the Conan the Barbarian remake. He's like the go-to remake. He just recently did a ghost movie that I'm going to be talking about soon on the podcast called Exeter.
Okay.
So he's he's a go-to horror movie director.
And there's a similar vibe, I think, especially with the Chainsaw Massacre remake.
Yeah.
This definitely takes place in the same world.
There's a grimy aesthetic.
There's two characters, I believe, that show up in this movie that are also in the Chainsaw Massacre. The old lady that says, just leave him alone.
Right.
And I believe the guy driving the tow truck at the end with the oxygen mask. Isn't he...
he kind of reminded me
I thought he was the old man without the legs, actually. But
maybe. He reminded me of the guy who says, "You're doomed," in the original Ralph. I thought they were almost trying to make him look like that.
Yeah,
that actor has since passed away. But
I was disappointed they didn't do a Crazy Ralph.
Yeah.
But
to talk about the plot in a Friday the 13th movie is a little bit redundant, especially this one. I've talked about this movie before, so I'll give you the floor to a certain extent. But I think the biggest problem of this movie is that it blows its load incredibly early.
The first 20 minutes?
The first 20 minutes before we see the caption Friday the 13th borders on fucking amazing.
I agree. I'll agree. They summarized part one in 3 minutes.
Yep.
They dispatch that and get on to the Sackhead Jason from part two, which was one of my... I like the Sackhead.
Yeah, it's a little bit clanny, but I like
it.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're right. And then it hits the title. Right then, though, we can already see we're dealing with a different Jason.
Yep.
The Jason I remember that I grew up with never set traps.
Nope.
This Jason sets traps, and he tied a girl up in a sleeping bag, dangles her over the fire. My Jason would have just sliced her in two with his machete. Catches another guy in a bear trap. I
think what you're getting at is that although it was brutal and like horrifying, and it was kind of exciting to see, and making Jason scary again, because let's be honest, we've had a lot of fun with Jason and like Jason in space and Jason versus Freddy, but he hadn't been scary in a while. And in those first 20 minutes, Jason became quite frightening. But I think that for me, they might have pressed the gas almost a little bit too hard, because as I say when I talked about Friday the 13th when we did the whole series, is that part of what I enjoy about those movies is that there's a sense of fun to them. And I think that's pretty much completely absent here. This movie seems to be taking itself very fucking seriously, which makes all the ridiculousness seem more ridiculous, and kind of it's off tone from the original series, I think.
See, I think with the teenagers that he's dispatching with, they try and have some fun with them. However, they're the most unlikable group of kids that you'll ever, I don't know. Like you said, the first 20 minutes was entertaining and great, and they hit the title, Friday the 13th, and you settled into your seat, say, all right, we're just getting started.
Let's
This
do
is
this.
going to be good. And then you meet a bunch of dicks that you just want to die really soon.
Travis Van Winkle plays Trent.
Oh, yes.
It's his cabin, or his parents' cabin, and he invited all of his friends out to Crystal Lake for a party. But he seems to hate all of his friends. He seems to not ever have any
he doesn't
fun.
like any of those guys.
He's trying like hell to put the wood to Daniel Pennebaker, and she's not interested, so he falls back on the other girl. What's her name? They're interchangeable.
I didn't know they had. Did they say her name?
Bree.
Right.
Juliana.
They did say that a few
Gill.
times.
Bree is her name. So if he's not going to sleep with one hottie, he'll sleep with another, but he seems pretty much indifferent to whether it happens or not. Hateable almost doesn't say it. And I think the movie knows that. I think that they draw out his death so that when he's one of the last people to go, the audience is supposed to be, yes,
Yeah, they want
he's
us to
dead.
They want us to
Thank
enjoy that
God.
one.
And I guess there was a little bit of that. If I'm honest, I was very happy to see that character die, but I would have been just as happy if he died 20 minutes or 30 minutes sooner.
But he did get to say the movie's line, "Your tits are stupendous."
Are stupendous.
Followed up by, "You have perfect nipple placement."
Yes.
Now, how many times, I mean, countless times I've been making love to a lady and I've just said, "You have perfect nipple placement."
And again, for the Bree character, why is she attracted to him? Like, clearly she could do better, right?
Yeah, that...
We have to talk about the sex in the movie, Scott.
Oh, was there sex in this
There
movie?
was.
I didn't notice.
Again, in the opening 20 minutes, there's a fairly graphic sex scene in a tent.
Mm-hmm.
But that kind of felt fun to me in a way. Like, it was like, we know what this movie is.
And there
right?
was the breast scene before that, too, leading up to it.
That was a little bit much, but whatever. The sex scene in the tent was pretty, hardcore. But in a way, in that scene, I was like, well, this is Friday the 13th, right? This is sex and violence, and it's being pretty honest about it. And I kind of liked that they were open out of the gate, that this is what it was, and were very unashamed.
And then we went to the nude water skiing
And
scene,
then there was a
which also
topless water
fit.
skiing.
Okay, we're in Friday the 13th. We're
Yep.
going to have more nudity.
And then we have this ridiculous sex scene that they cut away from and then back to and away from and then back to, and they work around a jump scare to it.
Yeah.
And it is like the most crazy, not even softcore. It makes me uncomfortable watching it by myself. Even if I'm watching it alone, it makes me uncomfortable. Friday the 13th
I'm with you.
is just not... It is about sex and violence, but it's about sex and violence. And I think during the second half of the movie, the sex might have taken over.
I'm with you 100%. And that's when he said the perfect nipple placement line. And right as soon as, I don't know, that took me out of the movie right from there on.
And we're done.
I was like, okay, I don't know if it was bad writing on purpose, just as a tribute to Friday the 13th movies not having traditionally great writing, but...
Or the acting was better, but the writing wasn't, I would argue.
I mean, I think the Asian guy was maybe the one likable character.
Because he just wanted to have a good time.
Yeah, he just wanted to have fun. Kind of liked when he offered Jason a hockey stick.
Yeah.
He said, "This goes with your outfit, dude."
They were trying things, and I got that they were trying things, but it didn't work for me. The Danielle Pennebaker character, and she's going to also show up in the Crazies, Jenna, she's virginal. She doesn't swear. She does everything she can to help Jared Padalecki's character, who's looking for his sister who's gone missing in the area. She's completely noble. By all accounts, they're telling us she's a survivor girl. But when they make the reveal that Whitney is still alive and the hostage, I said to myself, Jason hasn't killed her for 3 months. She's living through the movie. And I was 100% correct. Consequently, when that machete blade sliced through Danielle Pennebaker, I wasn't surprised. I was like, yep, she's out,
Yeah.
But I liked that they were trying something there, right? But it didn't pay off.
Well, we talked about some of the differences in this Jason. One thing my Jason definitely does not do is create underground tunnels.
No.
And he doesn't keep hostages for months. And I'd like to know who's paying the power bill.
Right.
But yeah, and he's setting up tripwires that ring bells to alert him of... I'm not sure if this was just done to explain how he seems to transport himself through the camp.
Instead of teleporting, he has secret passages. I don't know if that's more or less ridiculous.
That was one thing that brought me out of the movie. There was a certain point in this film when it stopped seeming like a remake, and it just started feeling like another sequel.
I think that the idea was that in this version, Jason is a living man, right? So until this movie dies, when they kill Jason, he was actually a living dude, right?
Yeah, I suppose so.
I don't like. I like Zombie Jason personally, but that could have been for the sequel. That's an interesting thing about this movie. It made a shit ton of money. It was very successful. So where's Friday the 13th 2? Where's Friday the 13th 3? Like, it seems like even the people involved in making this production 8 years ago now seem to know that they fucked it up.
Well, they didn't really, like I said, it started to feel like another sequel.
Yeah.
They didn't really take it any place new. I mean, and the place they did do new with the underground tunnels was the one thing that really didn't work.
The fans didn't like. Yeah.
No, and
where the movie works, I hate to say it. I mean, I guess I shouldn't hate to say it. Are the kills.
There's some really good kills.
There's some really good kills. Jason is brutal and he's scary, and they deliver in that. That Asian dude that you talk about just delivered such a horrible death. Oh God, One
problem with it with me is a lot of this movie feels like missed opportunities for me. Mm-hmm. One of them is there's the big scene at the end. There's the wood chipper or whatever in the shed there.
Yeah.
And we're thinking this is going to be good. But
someone's going through the chipper.
Yeah, we never do see someone go right through there, and that would have been a really glorious way just to spray some red.
Yeah.
But the biggest one is the discovery of the hockey mask. I looked into this movie thinking, how are they going to do the hockey mask? We're going to have a new way. How's he going to discover this plot point? And they could have done whatever they wanted to, and what they did was
he found a hockey mask.
Found it randomly a hockey mask in the garage and put it on, and that was it.
Yeah. There's a weird thing. It's one of the only moments that I kind of like in Friday the 13th 3D.
Yeah.
When Jason sees Shelley with the hockey mask, even though you can't see his face, for some reason I like anthropomorphize the bag on his head. Like, he sees Shelley walking with the mask, and he's like, "Oh, what am I doing with this sack on my head?" Right? That's me. That reflects Jason Voorhees.
But in the end, we come to this movie for the kills and the tits,
and it does deliver that. You can't say it doesn't.
No, and if they said, we have to make a movie with some teenagers smoking drugs and getting laid and then dying horribly, then
it delivers.
You get what you're getting. Yeah.
It's weird. Like, I feel like I should be more positive on this movie than I am, but I'm not alone. We're not alone on this. Like, Friday the 13th fans went to see this movie, and then they, like you and I, said, well, they should have done this, and they should have done that.
Yep, this was one I went opening weekend.
Yeah.
I had to see what they were going to do with it.
Again, it's not horrible, but it's, like, in a way, as much as I like the original Friday the 13th, there was plenty to be improved upon. And if you ask me which do I prefer, the original or the remake, I'm going to honestly say I prefer the original, although I will watch both.
I'll say the same for me. I mean, I'll watch all 6 of these remakes. But yeah, I agree, 100%.
Exactly what did you see?
Something was following us.
This is the most horrific event this town has ever seen. Authorities are calling this the Valentine's Day Massacre.
In the town of Harmony, something unexplainable
Hello?
is happening.
Come here, you better check this out.
What is it?
This January, prepare to witness.
What do you want?
The most frightening 3D motion picture event to tear through the screen.
So I've been in your man cave, I'm not going to lie. And by that, I'm not talking about your ass. I'm talking about... I've been in your basement.
You want to restart this?
I've been in your basement, and there's a lot of Oilers paraphernalia, and there's a lot of movies, and a glorious leather couch, and a big screen TV that is capable of 3D. That makes me envious. And you sat me down this is years ago now.
Yep.
and showed me My Bloody Valentine, which honestly I hadn't seen yet, and honestly it was like, I have a weird affection for the original My Bloody Valentine, and I'd heard a lot of negative reviews about that one. So when I sat down to watch it, I was like, let's check out the 3D. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and it's the paper glasses 3D. It's not the fancy.
Right.
Yeah.
But it was still kind of fun.
Oh, yeah.
Patrick Lussier and has often worked with the screenwriter Todd Farmer. If you have enjoyed Drive Angry with Nicolas Cage, or
I have seen that.
Jason X, Jason in
God.
Space, was written by Todd Farmer. There's nothing subtle about Todd Farmer at all. And in a way, the original My Bloody Valentine, for a slasher movie, had some form and some technique. The fact that it was a minor town, they used it to show it was its own community. It was kind of a different place, and that it was shot in Canada, and it was very rough-hewn. The acting was up and down. Some of the special effects were amazing, some of them not so much. But there's something about the movie that they make you like the characters so much that when they start dying, that My Bloody Valentine, the original, feels like this really brutal, classic form 80s slasher.
On a whole, I'm a big fan of
the
original My Bloody Valentine. It almost felt like that's one of the films that felt like my film.
Right.
It wasn't
not
the big,
everybody liked it.
Right. It wasn't the big film like Friday the 13th. It didn't have 18 sequels like Halloween or Amityville. It was the smaller Canadian movie that kind of felt like your own.
On the 10th anniversary of a Valentine's Night massacre, this guy Tom returns to his hometown. He was one of the few survivors of the original ordeal. And lo and behold, killings start showing up again in the town. Brutal, brutal deaths. And what's going on? Is it Tim? Is it someone else? Is it the sheriff who's a total dickhead? You talked about how none of the characters in the Friday the 13th remake were likable. I would posit that none of the characters in this movie were likable either. I think that the movie is fun, but I don't think I could say that I think that the movie is good.
Really? I enjoy it. I don't know if it's good or not. But I enjoy it.
Right.
Now, when I first seen this, I did see it in the theater.
Mm-hmm. And that would make a difference.
With the the new 3D technology they have. I think this was near the beginning, before every movie was out in 3D.
Right.
Now, there's a difference, first of all, movies that are 3D movies and movies also available in 3D.
Right.
This one was made as a 3D movie. It had 3D in the title. It's meant to be seen in 3D. And
I think not seeing in 3D will hurt your experience.
Much like Friday the 13th Part 3.
Right.
I think it adds to the fun. I think 3D works best as a cheesy gimmick, I'm sorry, for horror movies, where you want to see body parts flying at you and pickaxes coming close to your eyeball. And this movie, the 3D effects are quite good, I thought. I enjoyed it. Especially there's a scene in there where the old guy comes out of his house with a shotgun,
right?
And he points it out at the audience, and he scans it across the crowd in the theater. And actually, it was a very good theater effect. I saw people actually ducking, saying,
right.
"Oh, okay, he's pointing that gun right at me."
My face.
I mean, it's really, really cheesy. I see you out there, and he's pointing the gun. But
I love that
for
was
me,
Tom
it works.
Aikens too. That actor,
Yeah,
I love him. He's from Night of the Creeps.
That's right.
Thrill me. I think I carry too much baggage to the movie. I think I'm right there with you in that I really loved the original, and I kind of wish that this movie would have taken itself more seriously. And in a way, I think the missed opportunity of the original film, because the twist of the movie is that it's not this killer that's come back. We have a new killer. The original killer, Valentine's Day Massacre, is in fact dead and in the ground.
Yeah, they
in
changed
both versions. And as a result, they kind of killed their franchise, right? Like, how do you do My Bloody Valentine 2, 3, and 4, right? So this was an opportunity to maybe make My Bloody Valentine into the franchise that maybe I think it kind of deserves to be.
It could have been.
And because that, it became a gimmicky 3D movie with some hilariously over-the-top set pieces, although I did enjoy watching it, it just pains me because I wanted more of it. I think that my indifference to the movie is all coming from me. It's not horrible. It's not horrible, but I want it to be better.
Sure. I'll say it's probably my favorite 3D movie.
Okay.
I don't know if we're just going to base it on the 3D effects, but I mean, it's got to be more than that. But
how about the naked truck stop sequence?
Oh, the 6-minute nude scene.
Yes.
That poor actress. She was naked her entire time on screen.
But apparently they
naked
did it
head
all
to toe.
twice. There's another version you can see it where she's wearing underwear.
Okay, and I think that was just done for the trailer, or
Maybe, I don't know, but it wasn't enough that they had this poor woman do this entire sequence, which doesn't play out well for her, by the way, stark naked, and
the difference with Friday the 13th nude scene in this one was she was naked the entire time, but it was not a sexual. It was not a sexual scene. I mean, they were having sex at the start, but they have an argument. She's running outside.
Mm-hmm.
She
was sleeping with this trucker who was incidentally played by Todd Farmer, the aforementioned screenplay. And he really likes to put himself in the movies. And he really likes to put himself in the movies where scenes where there's a beautiful woman fucking him.
Yeah.
And I think it kind of rubs me the wrong way. I mean, Todd Farmer, I like where your heart's at with your screenplays, but you're coming off as a bit of a scumbag. Okay? That said, I did, just because of how crazy it was, enjoy that sequence. She is furious, and the fact that she's stark naked is not going to stop her from chasing this asshole out of the hotel room and just giving him a piece of her mind. It's insane, but it's totally interesting to watch.
It's kind of hilarious, really, for sure. And it kind of goes along with what you said earlier as far as what movies should be made into a remake. I think this movie was the right idea as far as a choice.
Mm-hmm.
It's maybe a smaller movie that not everybody heard of this movie. So maybe take this one and remake it to a larger audience.
Yeah.
I'm sure there's a lot of people that hadn't seen the original Bloody Valentine. So I like the idea that they made the remake.
But I think that if you watched the remake first and then you went back to watching the original My Bloody Valentine, you would probably think that you and I were crazy, right? Well, this is kind of a meandering, slow-moving, okay-acted slasher picture, and the remake is this full-throttle, goofy, 3D action piece, right?
Yeah.
And maybe that's okay, but for me, like I said, I keep going back to it. I love the original too much to, really get super behind this one. The biggest sin it does commit, I think, is to the original film. By itself, if it wasn't called My Bloody Valentine, if it was called Tim Comes Home for Vacation or something lame like that, I might like it better. I might, and that probably reflects on me as being a lousy critic.
I probably wouldn't have seen it on opening weekend. But, you're right. If you take out the 3D, maybe it's not as fun.
Yeah.
Because some of the 3D effects, I mean, right from the opening title sequence,
it's all over.
The 3D is really well done. That surprise pickaxe through the eyeball.
Mm-hmm.
You got a ripped open chest near the beginning. Looks great.
Oh, they certainly start with their pedal to the metal. Like right away, we're in a mine and people are being fucking killed brutally.
Yeah, that opening scene is actually the first 10 minutes or so is quite solid. I mean, it's not Shakespeare. It's not going to change anyone's life, but
that I don't think works in the movie. The twist.
Okay, the ending?
The ending.
Okay.
We're jumping ahead here, but I think that Todd Farmer and the screenplay writers were trying to do this bait and switch where, Tim would be obvious choice for the killer, so they wipe him off as a suspect earlier on. But clearly Tim is the killer. Yeah. Clearly, it's one of those things where they're trying to blow your mind with the twist, but it isn't. It would be like if the ending of The Sixth Sense happened and you knew the twist from the beginning.
I did know the twist, actually. I figured that out in Sixth Sense. I just want to say that.
Oh, I honestly didn't. That's good for you. But
I'm smarter than everybody in the world.
In this case, I saw it coming. I mean, maybe not right away, but I mean, they wanted us to think it was the sheriff so badly.
Right, because, it can't be him. He was locked in the cage when
they went out of their way to eliminate him as a suspect earlier on, and as a result, I was kind of like, no. And that's an interesting twist that they do keep from the original, in that everyone thinks it's this killer, this Valentine's Day Massacre killer, come back. Harry Warden. Harry Warden has come back for revenge because he warned them not to celebrate Valentine's Day. It was dead to this town, right?
Yeah.
And I like that idea. The town has a curse on it because of that horrible violence that happened on Valentine's Day. And in both cases, Harry doesn't show up again. It's just some other random killer. I think this was an opportunity
to
turn Harry into this. I like the image of the mask, the miner mask and the pickaxe. I think that it's strong. And there's something Whereas this movie is fun and goofy, there's something really brutal about the original one in that it takes its time to make you like all of the characters and then kills them all slowly in front of you. So I want this movie to be more than it is, so as a result, I'm less enthusiastic about it. That said, you could do a lot worse for a matinee fun afternoon slasher movie.
I think it's a fun, 90 minutes?
Yeah, it's very quick. It's very quick, but it's not as smart as it thinks it is. And I think that it's better at being stupid than it is at being smart. And I kind of wish it wasn't as stupid as it was. So there it is.
Fair enough.
Is there anything else you want to say about My Bloody Valentine? I've been really mean, haven't I?
I don't know. I only think that's about it.
Fair enough.
All around me are familiar faces, no expression, no expression. And I find it kind of fun.
He's got it.
You don't know that.
It's okay, I'm not sick!
Dreams in which I'm dying.
Oh my God.
Best I've ever had. Find it hard to tell you. I find it hard to tell. Run in circles, it's a very mad world.
So, whereas I had a bit of a love fest here, let's do this. So I had a bit of a love fest for the original My Bloody Valentine, and that might have contaminated my review for the remake, and I'm going to concede that. The problem does not exist for the Crazies.
Same here.
I'm not a big fan of the original. In a lot of ways, it just seems like a thinly disguised zombie movie, and not as good as his other ones, and amateurish in its production in a lot of ways. A lot of interesting ideas in the original. It's not a complete write-off, but there was plenty of room for improvement.
This is one where I saw the remake before the original.
Right, and that probably would hurt even more, right?
It's a little hard to... The original was not a huge popular film, so I had to seek that one out after and
Romero was having trouble getting any successes without having zombies in his movies. That's why there's 10 years in between Night of the Living Dead and Dawn of the Dead where he made movies that nobody saw, right? So this was the lesson. Bring the zombies and the people will come. Anyway, so I'm not as connected to the source material in this case. And I remember watching this movie very shortly after it first came out and thinking, that's a solid movie. That was really entertaining. And I rewatched it for this podcast, and I was really impressed by it. I really have to say, this director, Breck Eisner, I'm going to officially keep an eye on. I've always been a fan of Timothy Olyphant. I remember seeing him in a 90s movie called Go.
Okay.
A long time ago, and I'm thinking even then his supporting role as a drug dealer, that guy's going to be a movie star. So I don't know if I'm just attracted to him or he's just got lost in his eyes or what. But I like Timothy Olyphant. And
imagine him with Ryan Reynolds' abs.
If they just had an ab competition.
They should have a baby.
It would be the most beautiful baby. Timothy Olyphant is the sheriff of a charming small town who,
I can't even say his last name without saying elephant, though.
He's got an idyllic life with his wife, Radha Mitchell, who is also a scream queen. She just seems to love these genre pictures. And one day, a local farmer walks onto the baseball diamond with a shotgun and a really crazed look in his eye. Mm-hmm. And Timothy Olyphant, for the first time in his career, has to not only draw his weapon, but gun down a civilian of the town in front of everybody in town.
Opening night on the ballpark.
Yeah, and right away, that's pretty awful. And his day gets worse from there because we find out very quickly that this guy lives closest to the tainted water source, and as it's getting further along the community, more and more people are getting infected by it. And the scary thing about these Crazies is that they're not just ravenous zombies. It seems to affect everybody very differently. Mm-hmm. Some people are just riding around their bikes singing to themselves, and other people are burning their families alive. And Timothy Olyphant has to try to save his small town, and things get worse and worse. All of a sudden there's no phones anywhere. All of a sudden there's a military presence that's not letting anybody leave, and all of a sudden his wife is missing. Or she gets her temperature is risen, so she's taken by the military because they think she's infected, but he's pretty convinced she got the temperature reading because she's in fact pregnant. A lot of stakes, a lot of excitement, and some really good set pieces. So I guess I'm saying I'm a big fan of this remake of the Crazies.
I'll agree with you as far as you said you really enjoyed this rewatch of it. I as well did, and the proof on that is I took some notes for the movies I was watching,
Right.
and this one my page is empty.
Right.
I wrote something down about the opening, and then I just watched the movie. I enjoyed it too much. I didn't want to stop and write. I just enjoyed watching it. What I wrote down was the movie starts, the town's on fire, and then it cuts to a Johnny Cash song, and you know immediately I'm gonna love this fucking movie,
Right.
and you just sit back and you just let it happen.
You take the ride.
Yeah, and I love the way it starts, and like you said, the scene in the ballpark.
It tells you that bad things are coming.
This was a movie that should have been remade, and I think of the 6, without spoiling too much, this one I think improves on the original the most out of all 6. Yeah.
Fair enough. There are. It's a movie of moments for me, but there are so many of them that cumulatively, there's really, once the Crazies are unleashed, it's like try to get out of the town, try to get away from the crazy people. But there's a variety, like I said, in the madness that they are confronted with. 2 of my favorites involve a psychopath with a pitchfork.
Oh, yes.
Putting down a bunch of people who are strapped into hospital gurneys.
Great scene.
And Rada Mitchell is at the end of this line of people, seeing this guy coming as he goes bed to bed, skewering these poor, helpless people.
Yeah, a great scene.
And it is terrifying. There's another scene where our band of survivors find themselves in a farmhouse, and they're actually in the house for quite a while before they bump into the tenants of it. And there's this horrifying scene where Timothy Oliphant is in the middle of a struggle and desperately trying to reach for his handgun. And out of nowhere, this knife comes into frame and just skewers his hand to the floor. Yep. There was another guy just standing in the room the whole time.
That was the nursery, wasn't it?
Yeah. He was another guy standing in that room the whole time that was happening. And he didn't even make his presence known until that happened. And it's genuinely shocking because of it.
That's a great scene. The car wash scene is a lot of fun as well. It's intense, and you can, they took the original, changed some things up, had some great scenes. They made it more intense, more violent for sure.
Yep.
They took out and
scary. I couldn't call the original scary, and I could definitely call this remake scary.
One thing I'm glad they took out of the original was the
mad scientist.
Well, more I was going to say the incest.
Oh, yes. Good point.
I mean, when the father has sex with his daughter, I believe, right? Mm. I'm glad that was not in the remake. It's not enjoyable, I don't think, for anybody.
There's no place for it, too. There's something painfully random about it.
I guess that goes with it affects everybody different, and they just go crazy, and they lose their inhibitions, but...
That's ugly. That shit's ugly.
Yeah, I want to see people getting... their faces stabbed, but no one wants to see that.
Whereas Romero could be arguing, you could argue that Romero was basically making a thinly disguised zombie movie. Your wife's going to bed. She just waved at you through the glass.
Oh, okay. Good night, honey.
Whereas you could say George Romero was making a thinly veiled zombie movie. I like that even though these guys do start to wolf out a little bit and they start working the makeup effects on their face, like I said, it's distinct. Everybody seems to be a little different in how they take this.
Yeah, as the further it goes into the movie, the more it starts feeling like a zombie movie, I think.
Yeah.
And I believe the same people did the Dawn of the Dead remake that made this, didn't they?
Not the same director, but the same production.
Okay, because it definitely has the same feel, I find. Mm-hmm. So if there's some sort of input into it, but...
Amazingly, Zack Snyder directed the remake of Dawn of the Dead. I think it's his good movie. But there it is. Danielle Pennebaker is in this movie. She was also unlucky enough to be dispatched in the third act of Friday the 13th. And she is dispatched in the third act of the Crazies. We talked about the car wash sequence.
Oh, right, she
gets yanked out the back of the car and has her neck snapped. It's just interesting. We have crossover with both the screenwriter and that actress in this case. That's more of a fun fact than anything really
fun
critical.
Fact for the kids at home.
Yes. I am that much of a nerd. I'm a big fan. I got IMDb open here. I want to see the dude.
The dude.
Joe Anderson, I think, is the guy who plays Russell, Timothy Oliphant's deputy.
Okay.
Love that character. Because I think what that character provides for us is what it's like to be affected by the crazies. We see him very slowly slipping, and for a while he goes full bore crazy.
Yeah.
But he's allowed this moment of clarity where he says to Timothy Oliphant, "I'm not right, am I?" And that scene is so heartbreaking because you really like that guy. You know he's not going to live through the movie, but you really like that guy. And there's something about, we're going to go to spoilers here, his final act where he distracts the military blockade so that Timothy Oliphant and his wife can break free of it. And the last thing he says to the military as they close in to shoot him is, "Fuck you for what you did." And it's a weirdly strong moment in this movie, a really strong dramatic moment. Like, you don't see the face of the guy who shot him, but you have to believe that guy is going to be haunted by this dude for the rest of his life.
Yeah, you hear a couple shots ring off as our heroes are running away in the other direction.
But again, it's a supporting role, and he just nails it.
Yeah,
nails it. So
you like him beforehand, before he goes crazy, and you almost
like
feel
him
like
after.
when you realize he's going, you're like, oh no, no.
But the third act, I mean, it is maybe a little bit creaky, but I'm into the movie enough that when their speeding truck is just barely escaping a shockwave of a gigantic explosion, it looks like a nuke. I hope it's not really supposed to be a nuke, because that would make it a little stupider than we would want.
I thought it was, but
yeah. It's an awfully big explosion, and it's one of those like Indiana Jones in the refrigerator moments that even if you weren't in the immediate blast radius, you're pretty fucking dead, right?
Well, they get out of the truck after they're holding hands, looking back at it, right?
Yeah.
So, well, I guess let's go to the next town, which apparently, as we see, isn't any better. And
no. And again, I could have done without that last moment of the military has followed them to the next town, and presumably this is all going to start over again.
Yeah.
Why would the crazies be affecting that next town? Are they just going to kill the entire population of that town to cover their secret? Who knows?
Well, unless the water kept running through the...
Yeah. It did okay. It was an okay, well-received critically, and did well enough in the box office that I'm kind of surprised that nothing more has come of it. But then there's the other half of my brain that says not every movie needs a sequel.
For sure.
But everybody who likes horror movies should watch this movie.
Yeah, I think so. I agree.
Good enough?
Yeah, it's a good time.
Oh my god, it's him!
Freeze! It's not gonna stop. What do you want?
I want you to say 4 little words. I want to die.
I did an episode called Planes, Trains, and Automobiles some time ago, where my friend Ashley Pachkowski and I reviewed the 1986 film, The Hitcher. And she kind of missed out on the 80s. Well, she didn't see it when it came out, and I don't think she was as impressed by it. But
don't you sort of feel sorry for people that missed out on 80s horror, though?
Sometimes I do.
I feel bad for horror fans that missed out on 80s horror, because there's nothing quite like it.
And they're still there. You can still watch them, but some people wouldn't do it at gunpoint for some reason. The base story being told in both The Hitcher, the original, and this remake is preposterous. Like if you're one of those things that's fake kind of people, then beyond this point, do not enter, okay? The movie is completely ludicrous. What the original definitely accomplishes is this sort of ratcheting tension and stakes of this final conflict that's going to happen between this Ryder character and the main character played in that movie by C. Thomas Howell. What is it that this guy wants, and how is it that he manages to be wherever he needs to be to get shit done? Mm-hmm. And both the original and the remake are these weird hybrid horror action movies. There's a lot of car chases, there's a lot of gunplay, and a lot of violence. But the central figure, this Hitcher character, I think, and I've always felt this about the original, so I'm putting on this, is there's something bigger going on that we're not privy to.
Yeah, you do see a lot of that, more in the original, I think.
And I think that that's an opportunity that they could have taken for this remake to build upon.
Something almost supernatural or internal or almost like the devil or...
Why does he want to be killed? And why does he want this specific person to kill him? And why does he give them all of the opportunities to kill him while at the same time framing them for his crimes?
Yeah.
Like, there's like so much counterintuitive about his behavior. It's practically this demonic figure. In this remake, the Hitcher is played by Sean Bean, who's a fantastic actor and seems to really enjoy bringing the menace. But I can't help walking away from the remake wishing that I'd just rewatched the Hitcher, the original. Again, much like none of these remakes are outright horrible. They're all well made and for the most part well acted. But what did they do with the seed story? Is it better? Is it worse?
Yeah, I guess they'll say they took their favorite parts and reworked them a bit. They changed a little bit. It's not just the guy on the road trip.
It's a couple.
This time it's the couple, right? I mean, yeah, you're right. It's shot well. The opening title sequence, there's a storm coming over the mountain, and it's a nice, you settled in. Right, right away, the rainstorm, the first meeting of the Hitcher is kind of, I think, well done. It's kind of intense. You're not sure who this guy is, and then they drive away. And I was going to say something about you mentioned why is he doing this to him?
Right.
There's a moment in here where the male, the driver of the car, can't remember.
Jim Halsey. He's played by Zachary Knight.
Right. Which also, the guy and the girl. The character names?
Yeah, Jim Halsey and Grace Andrews.
Right. Jim and Grace.
Weird.
Interesting, eh?
My parents were named
Yeah.
What's going on?
That was crazy.
Now I know why I love this movie.
Anyway, he asks him, he says, why are you doing this to me? And he says, you're a smart guy, you'll figure it out. But we never really do figure it out. So at that point, on my first viewing, I thought, oh, they're going to finally explain the Hitcher.
Yeah.
But no, they never do. And we don't need to know, I guess. But
the way I interpreted the original film, Jim Halsey manages to escape the Hitcher. The Hitcher has him at knife point and does the classic scene, and they do it quite well here too. Says, I want you to say these words. I want to die. Which nobody who's got a knife pointed in their face is going to, really want to volunteer to say. So the fact that they're able to overcome that situation, a feat that apparently no one else who he's entered their car and has to, sort of nominated. These two are worthy adversaries. These are the two that are going to bring me to my end. It's not a fair thing to put on the movie like, this is what I would have done to make it better. But to my opinion, if your villain wants you to kill him, the way to win is to make him spend the rest of his life in a fucking cage. I think that this movie would have been much more interesting if it would have been much more of a victory for the characters. I think in a way it's almost like a 7 ending. The killer does all the damage that he wants to do, and then he dies exactly when he wants to do, having accomplished everything.
Yeah.
But where I don't get the nihilistic sort of hit that 7 gives me here, this movie just kind of like, well, they want me to feel that this girl is badass. And I think the real badass thing would do if she took that shotgun and blew out his knees and waited for the cops to show up. Because what did he want?
He wanted
her to kill him.
Yeah.
Why give him what he wants?
And why did he? I guess we don't know that.
Yeah.
Or did he just want to show that... I'm not sure what he wanted, or why. But
and a lot of stuff that's reliant on you seeing the original would probably be lost if you hadn't, right? In the original, Jennifer Jason Leigh plays this character, Nash, who is incredibly helpful to Jim Halsey, goes above and beyond, saves him from being outright murdered by police officers, and then for some reason takes him back to the hotel room and sleeps with him. But when you see this girl tied between the rig and the trailer, and he's got his foot on the clutch and is going to rip her apart, in the original it's a devastating moment. And it's weird to me, in this movie they do the reversal. It's Halsey, Jim Halsey is the guy who gets stretched between the semi and the trailer, and it's his girlfriend who has to feel the responsibility of his death. It's not as impactful. We don't even see the death of Jennifer Jason Leigh in the original.
No, and this time we see everything.
Time we see it graphically, and it's way more affecting in the original.
And I think that's what they did in this one is the differences they showed.
Yeah.
In the first Hitcher, they alluded to a lot of stuff. In
Yeah.
this one, we saw everything.
Mm-hmm.
We saw the station wagon with the slaughtered family, which was
awful.
Yeah, I mean it was bloody and gory, and
I think that's the outright nightmare moment of both of those movies, both the original and the remake, when the couple has escaped the killer and they're like, wow, that was a crazy adventure. It's all over.
Yeah.
We're going to continue our road trip. And then a family car passes them on the highway and the Hitcher waves at them from the back of the car.
Backseat with the kids.
And just like, oh my God. And it's well affected, but all of that was accomplished as well or better in the original.
See, I think it carries a little bit more. I mean, that's a very gruesome scene, especially in the remake when they pull up to the station wagon and you look inside and it's covered in blood and there's dead kids inside that car.
And everybody's dead except for the father. He's still alive.
Yeah.
Oh God.
And you feel that a little bit. You're like, oh my God, this is
this guy is not fucking around, right?
No. And then, I mean, there's different scenes where it turns into, like you said, an action movie later, where we have a car chase set to a Nine Inch Nails song.
Yep.
And that's not something you normally relate to a horror movie, but
the slaughter of the police precinct.
Yeah, it turned into a Michael Bay movie for sure.
Mm-hmm. It's not so much scary; it's entertaining. But I think for a while, the original I think was heavily influenced by the Terminator. Especially, I thought that when I was a kid because of the killing of all the police officers. Like whatever state this takes place in, they take a real hit on their police force. When Halsey is arrested, or in this case, when both of them are being questioned by the police, the Hitcher, well, that works against his plan. So he just goes to the police precinct, kills all the cops there, and leaves the cell door open. Right. Yeah. And so that he can continue fucking them.
Right, which does not make a lot of sense.
It doesn't make sense, and in both cases, they can't show him do the act unless they basically explain to us implicitly either he is supernatural or some kind of like killer robot, right? Like
he's Rambo all of a sudden.
There's no credible way for him to do it, and I think in that's why. I wanted to talk about Neil McDonough. He plays Lieutenant Estridge. There's a character in both movies, but he's played differently here. He's got a very striking face, very, very light hair, and you see him pop up as a small character role. He's an interesting guy, and I can't help but wonder what the hell he's doing in this movie. This is a man who has refused roles on major television programs because he's like super Christian, and he didn't want to like pretend to make love to someone who wasn't his wife, right? Huh. Like he's got this real moral center as to like what he will and will not do, which is weird because he shows up in movies like Hitcher and The Ravenous. My problem with this Lieutenant Estridge character in the film, he's like the original film. He's the one cop that sort of sees that these people can't be it, right? Mm-hmm. Like, and in this version, it starts that way. He's like, I just talked to these two kids, and there's no way they slaughtered a family full of, like a car full of people. There's just no way that happened. But then they get conclusive proof over the radio. They say they just opened fire on police because they misdirected it. And then for the rest of the movie, he becomes driven to really catch them. And where does this all lead? Nope. He's not an essential part of the story.
It kind of stops there.
It's about this sort of conflict between the Grace Andrews character and John Ryder. The whole movie is about these two meeting for a final conclusion. There is nothing they can do with that Neil McDonough character except for shoot him in the head. So when it happens, it's like, I'm not surprised by it. I'm not affected by it. I just keep on wondering, what are you doing in this movie? Both as a character and as the actor. What are you doing here, buddy?
Fair enough. I believe I'm trying to remember the Hitcher, but from my memory, one thing I thought they did better in the remake was they showed how John Ryder got out of the
police car.
Yeah.
When he was arrested,
That's right. How he broke his thumb and got the handcuffs off. They slit the throat of the officer in the back with him. In the original, am I right, where you don't see that?
You just see the car starting to go crazy.
Yeah, and it crashes and he gets out. But I don't know.
You
I always wondered,
they went that
because
far.
I wondered before, how did he get out of that? Why are you taking your shirt off, Larry?
Because you love it.
Sorry. For those of you at home. Wow, really lost my train of thought.
I didn't mean to flash you there, but why would he bother with that subterfuge? Is like,
yeah.
Well, that's it. It's the stuff that we don't know about John Ryder that is really tantalizing in both the original and the remake. And the remake seemed, if you're gonna bother to remake the Hitcher, I don't think you need to. I think the original Hitcher is a totally solid film. If you are gonna do it, tell me more about John Ryder, please.
The original Hitcher to me was. I've such a memory of this. As when I think of the Hitcher, I think of the VHS box that I rented about 10 times from 7-Eleven, back when 7-Eleven rented movies.
Nice.
I just remember going to 7-Eleven and you'd always see the Hitcher there, and I'd rent the Hitcher, and enjoy. I know you were a fan of the Hitcher. I've watched it with you as a kid a lot. There's one scene from the French fry scene. That was, as I say, with remakes, sometimes you're looking for that one scene. This one, there's tied between the trucks. They got to have that scene there. And the other one I was waiting for was the finger in the French fries, which doesn't make any sense in the original. Why?
How did he do that? How did he kill a guy and manage to put the guy's finger in his plate of fries without him noticing it until he literally lifts the finger off of the plate?
But I will say the absence of that scene in the remake,
was felt.
I noticed it and I said, they didn't do the finger in the French fry scene.
It was a damned if you do, damned if you don't thing, I think. It was one of those things.
But it was one I found myself looking forward to it, and it wasn't there. But there wasn't a lot of reason to remake this other than maybe someone hasn't seen The Hitcher. It wasn't a huge film, I don't think.
Yeah. It doesn't seem to have the crowd around it that some of the other 80s horror movies do. I think it's because it's a kind of a hybrid. It's a horror movie, but it's an action movie.
Yeah, it's not an R-rated.
But it's a slasher.
Because I don't think there's any real on-screen violence or blood anyways
well,
in the original.
There is, but
I mean, they wrap it up for sure in the remake. If that's your only reason for redoing it, just to bring it to a bigger audience and bring some more blood, then maybe that's the reason.
I guess, I hate to repeat myself, like a lot of these remakes, it's fine, but I'd just as soon watch the original.
Mm-hmm.
David. Please. Please. You have to get me out of here.
Leave this book alone.
No. You don't understand. There was something in the woods. And I think it's in here with us now.
Do it.
Let's do this. Of all the films that I bring baggage to, I think the Evil Dead remake is possibly the one that had the most to live up to in my mind.
I'm going to say, I think I'm agreeing with you.
Right.
That I go into this a huge Evil Dead fan. Not the movie itself. Well, yes, the movie, but the whole franchise. It's one of my favorite horror franchises of all time. All time, for sure.
And especially of the 80s.
I hold
that 1-2 punch of Evil Dead and Evil Dead 2 is just amazing. Like, I will watch anything Sam Raimi makes for the rest of his career because of those two movies.
Yeah, if he released a video of him taking a bath,
so be it.
Yeah, I'll check that out. It's probably got great camera work.
Maybe Bruce Campbell will show up as a cameo as the guy who hands him a towel.
There you go, sir. Yeah, I do. I agree. I hold it very high. It's had a lot to live up to.
So I went in a little bit resistant. I gotta say, I was like, all right, if you're gonna bring me some Evil Dead, Mr. Fede Alvarez, who's the name of this director and co-writer, you better bring something awesome.
That's produced by the
original. Sam Raimi is on board for this.
So that did make me feel a little bit good, saying, you know what, it's gonna be loved.
Yeah.
But that fucking trailer, though,
was really strong.
When I first saw that trailer, the red band trailer for Evil Dead,
seeing the tongue split,
that trailer was better.
Amazing.
That trailer was better than the 5 movies that we already talked about. I mean,
well, the brilliant choice that they made in this remake was to not try to recreate Ash.
Yeah.
If you tried to bring a figure into this movie to step into the shoes of Bruce Campbell, it was immediately doomed to failure. And I think Fede Alvarez knew that, and instead what he set out to do is to make the movie that Sam Raimi was trying to make when he made the original Evil Dead, with all of the tools that Sam Raimi didn't have when he made Evil Dead. This is a capital H horror movie. This movie is not fucking around. Like, it is one of the most horrifyingly violent and entertaining movies that I have seen in recent memory. I am a huge fan of this remake, and I did not expect to be. It's weird because it's a story about a bunch of kids who go to a cabin and do everything wrong.
Yeah.
Oh, here's a book sealed with barbed wire made of bound in human flesh
that says do not read.
Let's clip it open and start sounding out some of these words. Like, ostensibly, that's just fucking ridiculous. But I have watched this movie a lot. Like, I don't tire of it.
I love it.
And it is a better movie than Sam Raimi's Evil Dead.
Whoa, that's hard. Those are big words.
On a production level, on an acting level,
yeah, you know what?
On a visceral impact level, on an emotional affecting level, it achieves everything that it's trying to achieve. And the Evil Dead movie, it's got a lot of great scenes, but I don't think it achieves everything it wants to be. I think it's hobbled by its budget and the amateurish stuff going around it. I love Evil Dead. I'm not saying Evil Dead's a bad movie. No. I hope that that's not what you're hearing.
I get you, what you're saying. I mean, I watched a documentary recently where Greg Nicotero had said if they could make the effects proper in the first Evil Dead, you know, if they had the money or the resources to have the effects that they wanted to do, that movie would have been scarier than The Exorcist.
Yeah.
And I mean, maybe that's kind of what you're saying here, that
it's a scarier movie. I enjoy watching the original Evil Dead a lot. I still get a lot out of it even today, even with all its rough corners.
And it's got the rough corners, yeah.
Yeah. This remake, man, I think that part of it was, whereas I had higher expectations of some of these other remakes, like, well, you know, why couldn't they make an improved version of, you know, the Hitcher? Why couldn't they? You know,
it shouldn't be too hard.
It shouldn't be that, but they kind of failed. In this one, I expected them to fail, and maybe that expectation was what made this sucker punch hit me, because shit.
Well, you can tell they made a clear attempt to make what they could. It's like they tried to make the most terrifying movie that they possibly could, and I think that's the tagline for the movie, isn't it?
It's a grueling experience in terror. That was the tagline for the original film.
Right, this one, isn't it, say on the poster, I think it says the most terrifying movie you will ever experience, or something like that. But and you can see from every image, from everything from the image to the mood and the sound. There's a siren sound that they play now and then when bad shit is happening. And for whatever, that puts chills. And the way the creatures move, everything, the over-the-top gore is there.
Well, let's start. So here we are, 5 minutes into the review, and I think we should start talking about it. The opening sequence.
Yeah.
Terrified woman, filthy, bloody, staggering through foggy, horrifying trees, gets totally smashed in the face with the butt of a rifle by these two hayseed fellows. Cut to same woman tied to a pole in some obscure basement, and some horrible ritual taking place, which involves engulfing this poor woman in flames and then blowing her head off, and it's her father who gets to pull the trigger. And then we have credits.
When she speaks in that demonic voice.
Yeah.
That gets you.
Yeah, and the acting's really good there when she's pleading and begging her, please don't do this to me, you believe her. And when she turns demonic, you believe her. Right? And so, these kids come to this obscure cabin in the woods to help their friend Maya kick a nasty drug habit. She's been to this roadie a few times before. A lot of them are a little bit tired of her. And it was a really good excuse for them to stay in the cabin longer than they would have otherwise.
Right.
Because they don't believe Maya. They don't trust Maya. They think Maya's going to think of any ridiculous excuse.
Sure, the tree raped you.
Exactly.
Okay, Maya.
She's going to think of any ridiculous excuse to get out of this cabin because she wants to go get her fix. But she wants to get out of the cabin because she fucking knows that something terrible is going to happen.
She brings that performance when she's whispering to her brother in that scene. You hang on every slowly spoken whispered word, and it's
and how frustrating it must be for her, because she's probably deserved this lack of trust. She's probably earned it, right?
Yep.
But she is actively trying to save her friend's life, and they are having none of it. It's brutal.
And you kind of see her brother, I think, is the character that you're watching thinking, I think he's going to be the Ash. Yeah, he's even got the denim shirt, I believe. So he kind of looks like he takes a little bit of physical abuse, kind of like Ash.
Yeah. Ash is very meek in the first film. A lot of people forget that.
Yeah,
he's not a badass
He's
at
not
all. The
one-liner Ash that we see in Evil Dead 2. This has nothing to do with Evil Dead 2. This is the straight ahead.
No laughs.
Let's make the scariest movie we can possibly make.
I don't think there's like any deliberate laughs anywhere in this movie. I think they really like.
And I don't know if I look at it as much as a remake. I look at it as another story that fits in the whole Evil Dead universe. Yeah. It's a worthy member of the whole family, I think. Just an alternate Evil Dead story, I think, and it works for sure.
I'm sort of shocked. Like again, like why not an Evil Dead 2? You guys, like if you can remake Evil Dead so successfully, why not move on? But where do they go from here? And can they turn on the camp for number 2 now, or do they, once they've established this world, do they tread forward?
Yeah, I don't know if you do a remake of I'm not sure about sequels to remakes.
Yeah, it's tricky.
Yeah, I mean, Halloween tried. Hills Have Eyes. They don't usually work as well as the first shot, but
just a few of the things that you'll be treated to if you watch this movie, and please do. A woman slaps another woman, throws her down on the ground, flips her over, and full-on vomits into her face.
Sam Raimi loves people vomiting on each other's faces, doesn't he? Like, Drag Me to Hell? Or
Drag Me to the Hell is just full of fluids. There's a lot of fluids in that.
Yeah, it's gag-inducing.
There's a scene where the guy who we should hate, but I still like, the dude who reads from the book, who actually cuts the book open and reads from it, who is responsible for all of this. His girlfriend stabs him in the face several times with a needle, and we see him remove the needle from his lower eyelid. It's the most horrifying thing. Like, and these are just a couple of moments. Like, they're all over this movie. Like, they're all over this movie.
And that's without even talking about tree rape.
Tree rape? And that's one of the few things that they took from the original.
That's from the original, right.
Yeah. And it's interesting, Sam Raimi has said that he's kind of a little bit embarrassed by that sequence as he grew up. He's like, it's a sequence he came up with as a young man and thought it was badass and cool, but as he's grown up and got a little more perspective on it, he thought it was maybe a little bit distasteful. So it's funny because he did it again in Evil Dead 2, so I mean, he must have not thought it was that distasteful, but I guess it was less implicitly rape and it was more the trees killed that woman.
And infected her with whatever demonic presence.
presence.
And you're missing the biggest ick kind of moment, I think, is the slicing of her own tongue.
Oh, she splits her tongue.
Oh my goodness, that is such a. I showed my wife that scene, and she had to turn her head away, and she was gagging. She said, "This, she's making that sound, and she could not watch it."
So you're watching an effective horror movie with somebody who's gagging.
Yeah, and I thought that is so disgusting. I love the hell out of it.
Yeah. We engage with the characters in a way that they seem real to me. In the original movie, it's a group of people that come to a cabin to be killed, and they're two sets of couples, really, and they're fine. But everybody's motivations, except for the idiot who reads the book, I completely buy. Mm-hmm. And the fact that her brother, like you said, the guy David, played by Shiloh Fernandez, you kind of expect to play this heroic role. And in the end,
he kind of does.
He does him to a certain extent until he's no longer alive.
Yeah, and it's like, okay, the hero's dead now.
The movie's about Maya.
Yeah,
and that final confrontation, which is a complete new invention, but that I completely buy in this Evil Dead world. Once the spirits have claimed X number of souls,
the abomination shall rise, and
a blood rain falls.
Yeah,
I can't imagine they had a sprinkler system filled with red Kool-Aid or something like this. And the entire end sequence, Maya is fighting a demonic version of herself. And she is completely alone. And it is terrifying.
It is and I believe that's the scene that put them over the top. This is the officially the bloodiest movie of all time.
Yep.
And I think once it's raining blood, that
Yep.
That puts you over the edge. And
all stops pulled out in this movie. Like, they were not fucking around. Like I said at the start of this movie, they wanted to make a capital H horror movie, and they succeeded in a way that I could not have anticipated. I have to say, as much as the same way I said with Sam Raimi and the Evil Dead movies, this Fede Alvarez guy,
yeah,
anything he does,
I want to see what he does next.
Anything he does, be it a romantic comedy or, you know, I don't know,
and
How the West Was Fun 3, you know, I don't give a shit. I will show up and watch it. So I'm not sure what his next project is, but I'll be on board.
And one of the things they did was with this remake, there was a lot of little Easter eggs, little nods, I guess, for fans of the franchise. You had Ash's car, if you noticed, was in the back. It was an abandoned old car. When they first drive up to the cabin, you hear, if you listen quietly, you can hear a faint knock. Join us, but it's very faint. You can barely. But fans of Evil Dead, they hear it.
Yeah.
Ash cuts off his hand very obviously in the Evil Dead film. In this one, we have someone chop off their whole arm with the carving knife, which is a beautiful, grisly scene.
Yeah.
So many nail guns in the face. She's that girl that's like cutting her smile into her mouth with the broken.
Blade. Yeah.
So this is not for the squeamish, this film. No,
they don't make movies like this though. Like, there's always, I don't know if it's the influence still of Scream, but there always seems to be a wink, or like, let's stop and give them a break, or let's, you know,
hey, where's our comic relief?
Yeah, let's get up to the point of where the needle stabs him in the eye and then cut away. But this is not what this movie is about. They are not going to spare us anything, and it's glorious.
One question I have on it is, I believe when they read the book, it says when 5 souls are claimed, the skies will rain blood, and the abomination shall rise. And I've always had issue with wondering, and not always, I guess, but you wonder, were there 5 souls that were taken, and who counts as a soul?
Maybe it's 5 in one night.
Yeah, I started wondering, because it sometimes adds up, and it depends who you listen to if it matters. But then at the end, does it really matter? This is just something that he read in this book, and it's been rewritten. There's scribbles on top of scribbles, and so I guess it doesn't matter how many souls have been taken. This shit is happening right now, and you have to deal with it. And when they first made that switch to Maya being the hero, at first I wasn't sure what I thought of this, thinking, well, wait, she was just the demon in the cellar trying to kill everybody, and now we're rooting for her. But after revisit, it was a chance they took, changing things up, and I like what they did.
They were not going to be able to recreate Ash, so they didn't try. Yeah. And bravo. I think the 2 takeaways I have from this is that it justifies the existence of remakes, because I could not have anticipated that the Evil Dead remake would be like that. I would be this happy about it. Like, I was completely broadsided by how good it was. I honestly,
I think
I sat down in the theater and I folded my arms and I looked at the screen and like, bring it, Evil Dead, and they did.
Yeah, I think this was out one day before I seen it. This was one I had to see. Like I said, that trailer, it sold me, and I think I expected it
to be
based
good.
on that trailer. This looks incredible. This looks like a horror movie, with the capital H horror movie, like you said. And they brought it. Yeah. I think we're taking their hand a bit here, but
the other lesson: if you find a book that is wrapped with barbed wire that says "Do not read this book,"
do not read it.
Don't fucking read it, you moron. All right, my brother. Let's rank some remakes. Thank you so much for doing this.
It was nice meeting you out in Canmore, Alberta. We started this doing this recording outside
We have
under
to
the
move
stars.
in. It got a
and-
little cold.
yeah, the lightning. There's some nice lightning flashes out there, and kind of added to the
Ambience.
Yeah, it was nice.
Again, I'm surprised by the quality of the remakes. Considering the reputation that most remakes have, even the ones that I don't like here, they're not necessarily awful movies. I just prefer the originals. And me preferring the originals doesn't necessarily, make or break these titles individually.
Yeah, I'll say I enjoy. I own all 6 of these movies. I enjoy watching all these films. I'm curious about remakes. They can take a favorite movie of mine and say we're doing a remake of it. I'm curious what they're going to do. It doesn't mean it's going to be great, but I'd like to see their take on it.
So, if I'm not a big fan of the My Bloody Valentine remake, the original My Bloody Valentine is always going to be there,
Sure.
And some other people are going to miss out on that because they're, stuck up about 80s, and, they just don't realize what they've given up. Scott, what was your least favorite of these 6 remakes and why?
Like I said before, I do like all these films. They're all well-made films. None of these are bad films necessarily. Something's got to go at the bottom, as you often say, and number 6 is going to be The Hitcher.
Okay.
I think it's the one that seemed the least necessary to remake. Not necessary, but they didn't do anything to it. I didn't find, other than switching the male and the female character. Really, it didn't add anything to it. It just felt like something was missing from it. And the reason that the Amityville Horror gets number 5 above it is because I think it has moments where it surpasses the original.
Right.
And that's something the Hitcher doesn't have in the whole movie. Number 4, Friday the 13th.
Mm-hmm.
It's higher than the other 2 because it has more breasts in it. I can't rate it higher than number 4 because it has too many breasts in it.
There's titty exhaustion.
Yeah,
you get titty fatigue watching
I started
this
thinking,
movie.
geez, come on. How long is this sex scene really going to be? But it basically, it is what it is. It's entertaining, but it doesn't really give us anything new. And as I said before, it starts to feel more like another sequel after a while. Just another bunch of horny, druggy kids running from Jason. But again, that's what we wanted to see, and that's what they give us. It's not at the bottom, but I can't put it higher than where it is.
Right.
Number 3, Bloody Valentine. I put 1 higher than Friday the 13th. I think this, like I said before, this might have introduced more people to the original movie. Everybody knows who Jason Voorhees is.
Yeah.
Whether you're even a horror fan or not, you know the hockey mask. I think I like the My Bloody Valentine remake idea because not everybody knows about My Bloody Valentine, and I want everyone to know about it. And the image of the miner, I think, is it's really fun. Yeah, it's cool, and I think I don't think we need any more remakes of Friday the 13th. I don't even honestly think we need more sequels.
Right.
You can make a slasher about someone wearing a different kind of a mask.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be Jason anymore.
That said, if they made another one, I'd watch it.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I'll watch it with you. But yeah, I mean, Friday the 13th, they kept churning out endless sequels, and this was just another one. My Bloody Valentine was something a little bit fresh, so that's why it gets up there.
Sweet.
Crazies at number 2. As I said before, it's got the biggest gap as far as the improvement. The original versus this one, it's got more scares. It's just immensely better.
Yeah.
And it improved on the source material, the scares, the deaths. But number 1 is Evil Dead, without question for me. It's just talking about Evil Dead with you right now. I feel like watching Evil Dead right now.
I wish I'd brought it with me. I was like, it's 10 after 12, but fuck it, let's watch some Evil Dead.
I'm not sure if I like it more than the original, but it probably is a better movie than the original for the reasons that you said. If I'm holding on to the original, that's just because I've got a love affair for the original, and I appreciate how it was made with the little money they did have for it. And like I said, the trailer for The Evil Dead is better than the other 5 movies.
Yeah. But it's always tricky with trailers because trailers are designed to make you watch the movie, right?
It's the best.
Look how awesome this movie is. You're an idiot if you don't watch it, right?
And Evil Dead gets number 1. It's a horror movie for horror movie fans. If you're a true horror movie fan, you will like this. If you kind of like horror movies, say, I like Scream, well, you might like this, you might not. But if you like it grisly and bad, number one easy for me.
Well, I'm afraid to say that we don't go 6 for 6 or 0 for 6. Damn
So
it.
you do not get a prize. I was going to give you a prize today, Larry, but no sadly.
Oh, I actually thought there was a chance that we would go 6 for 6.
You're saying there's a
for some
chance.
reason, but you're telling me there's a chance. I put My Bloody Valentine at the bottom, and I think that it might be me.
This is just another, you have to think, you rate these movies wrong a whole bunch of times.
You're just wrong, Larry.
Yeah.
My opinions are incorrect.
6-minute nude scene.
Yeah, well, there's a 15-minute nude scene in Friday the 13th, and it ranks higher. Again, it's okay, it's fine, it's entertaining. I think that I bring baggage from the original, and I just wanted this to be better, and it wasn't, and something had to be at the bottom. So My Bloody Valentine went there. I think it's a kitsch movie. I think it is a 3D movie. I think you take the 3D out of it, and it's just another slasher movie. And I think that the original is above average slasher movie. Even a great one.
Yeah.
So, My Bloody Valentine. I put the Hitcher at 5th place, so we're not far off. You put Hitcher at the bottom, right?
Yeah, you're still wrong.
Just wrong. It's quick, it's 80 minutes, it's well made, but you're not going to get anything out of this that you won't get better in the original. So there it ends up. In 4th position, I put the Amityville Horror because Ryan Reynolds is just a dreamboat. No, I mean, I think the first time I watched the movie, I was a little bit harder on it. When I watched it again, I actually did find more to like. There's some confusing choices in the script. There's just a few things that they could have tightened, and I think that it would have actually been quite strong. And again, I think, as compared to the rest of this movies, the source material was less sacred to me. We kind of agree on the original Amityville as it being more interesting and significant than good.
Yeah.
Scratching and fighting and kicking its way all the way to 3rd place, which is quite high considering the lambasting that I gave it when we reviewed it, is the remake of Friday the 13th. But what am I going to say?
Underground tunnels.
What is Friday the 13th? It is brutal violence and sexuality, right? Mm-hmm. It's tits and blood. And the remake definitely delivers those two things. To a degree that, in a way, I was never made uncomfortable in the previous movies, I was weirdly made uncomfortable here. I'm almost ranking it 3rd on the strength of the first 20 minutes. But it's not awful. It's another Friday the 13th movie, and I am a fan. 2nd place is the Crazies. I think this is the one of all of these movies, for some reason, that might have got missed by people. And a lot of people didn't even know it was a remake. But
I wasn't aware when I first saw the Crazies.
Right.
I wasn't aware it was a remake.
Yeah,
I had to search the original out.
And I'm a fan of George Romero, but Crazies is not near his best work. So it was across the board an improvement on the original. So I have to, be impressed by that. And like I said, upon watching it again, my opinion of it went up. A lot of times, the second time I watch a movie, it's just the mood, Who knows? Maybe if I watched My Bloody Valentine on a different day, it would just rank higher. There is something terribly random about this podcast and how it is ranked.
I'm gonna have to watch Bloody Valentine on 2D
just
to see if it's
and of course, Evil Dead's number 1 because it's fucking amazing. I mean, I sound like I'm a little bit hyperbolic about it, but I would never have anticipated that the remake of Evil Dead would have exceeded the original in my mind, because the original looms pretty large in my mind. So, bravo to everybody involved in that very wet piece of work.
And make something else soon, because I want to see it.
Yeah, I know he's got another thing coming, but I can't think of the name. Anyway, shall we, Jerry?
So you're
Jerry's brother.
Now that Larry's done ranking wrong again.
Again.
Wow.
I always get it wrong.
I
Don't
always side with your guests. You are out to lunch again.
That's because I got smart friends.
Yeah, we're close. I think My Bloody Valentine was the one.
I'm not passionate about the bottom half of the list. Like, really, on a different day, they might have changed. But the number 1 and 2, I stand by. And that's definitely where we agree. I
think so.
I hope there's no hurt feelings.
I just couldn't put Friday the 13th that high, especially after I put the original so high in our slasher.
I guess.
I thought, all right, I got to be realistic now.
So
underground tunnels. Okay, sorry.
Some Jerry's. I've come up with some categories and some nominations, but as you're my guest, you get to pick the winner. This is where you get to take control, and I can tell you if you're wrong. I thought we'd start simple.
Yes.
6 movies, 6 arguable psychos. Derek Mears took the role of Jason Voorhees in the reboot of Friday the 13th.
Okay.
He's intimidating, he's fast, he's a lethal Jason. So I gave him a nomination. I nominated, and I could have nominated a lot of people in the Crazies, but I nominated the Pitchfork dude from the Crazies. I should. He didn't have a lot of lines, but I really do think that guy brought a performance.
Well, I think his feet are on the poster, aren't they?
Yeah, he's dragging the fork.
Yeah.
Ryan Reynolds and his magnificent abs. He slowly goes crazy through the course of the Amityville horror. Sean Bean, of course, as the Hitcher. And Maya from Evil Dead, because she's arguably out of her fucking mind.
Jeez. Well, as much as I do love those abs, because they're amazing. I mean, when you think everyday ordinary,
just hypnotizing.
Everyday an ordinary American dad. That's what I.
Why have a 6-pack when you can have a keg? That's what I say.
But the Pitchfork guy, I would lean towards if it was a bigger role. But now that Maya's in the mix, Maya's got to get it. Evil Dead.
Evil Dead. I think Evil Dead's going to be well represented.
I'm going to accept this trophy on her behalf.
All right.
And bring it to the cellar.
Best death.
Ooh,
best death. There's a lot of them. Jeez. I put the sleeping bag kill at the beginning of the Friday the 13th, but really that whole sequence could really be included in that. I have the rig split from the Hitcher, where we actually get to see what we were denied seeing in the original.
It was kind of a fun effect.
Yeah, no, they definitely.
If you're going to remake it, you got to show this stuff this time.
Yeah. I put quote "fuck you for what you did" in the Crazies. There's a lot of deaths in the Crazies, and we don't even see that one, but I gotta say, that was surprisingly impactful in a movie that was, it surprised me. The eyeball stab in My Bloody Valentine at the beginning of the movie. There's a lot of hilarious deaths in that movie, but that one was pretty spectacular. The opening sacrifice scene of Evil Dead, where this woman is first lit on fire and then has her head obliterated by a shotgun. Jeez. And I put the neck hand stab in the Crazies. We mentioned in the review that he gets his hand stabbed through, but he then pulls the knife and his hand free of the floor, and he actually stabs one of the Crazies in the throat with the knife still in his hand, and it's pretty fucked.
When I saw that scene, I remember thinking, this is going to be one of the
We're
top.
going to bring it up. So those are your nominations. Rig split, sleeping bag kill, fuck you for what you did, the eyeball stab, opening sacrifice, and the aforementioned neck hand stab.
Jeez,
that's not easy.
The eyeball stab I love because it's kind of shocking. It comes out of the blue. You're not thinking the movie's going to start yet.
Yeah.
And think,
you barely settled in your seat.
You had your first handful of popcorn and this eyeball's coming out at you. Jeez, you know what though? But the Crazies. Let's go for the Crazies for that one. For the knife through the hand.
The neck stab.
Yeah, in the nursery. That was a vicious scene. So that gets the golden trophy for that one.
Nice. I'm not going to fight you on that at all. What the fuck?
Oh,
what the fuck?
How many nominees do we have for this?
Only 6. But there can be another. We can do what the fuck too if you want at the end. I have a special category of what the fuck that we can get to if you like. I just put the sex in Friday the 13th. Like, what the fuck? Really, you're not directing Red Shoe Diaries, okay? This is a fucking Friday the 13th movie. Show us some titties, but then get on with the fucking movie, right? I put the tree rape sequence in The Evil Dead. I think it was well handled, and it's definitely, in both movies, a pretty what the fuck moment.
But it was tastefully done.
The entire, yeah, I guess, if as tasteful as a tree rape sequence can be handled. I put Neil McDonough's entire presence in The Hitcher, because I really do think you could cut out all of his scenes and you wouldn't lose anything, honestly. The scene we just talked about with the neck hand stab, I back up now to the sequence where he's just reaching for that gun, and you think he's about to rectify the situation, and this knife pops into his hand. I was like, what the fuck? Because he didn't even know that guy was in the room, right? And then I have the sex scene / ghost girl hangs herself in the Amityville horror, because that scene is so weird. Like, I don't understand.
She wasn't hanged. She was shot.
And why is she... I just don't understand what it's doing there. It's just that whole... I mean, I guess you want a sex scene. I guess I understand the choice to have a sex scene. Yeah. And Melissa George is hot. Unfortunately, we don't get to see her nakedness, but...
They figured we haven't had a jump scare for a while. We need to throw one in.
But it is like the quintessential random jump scare. So anyway, sex in Friday the 13th, tree rape... the naked rage, sorry I missed that, naked rage in My Bloody Valentine, the entire sequence where this furious woman comes running out of the hotel room to just tear a strip off of this asshole trucker, and it doesn't play out.
And can I give an honorable mention to one I forgot?
Go.
The gas station clerk in The Hitcher. When they have that weird conversation,
right,
he invites him to come back to their house to see his donkey.
Yeah. It's just a strange inclusion.
What the hell?
Yeah, I forgot about that.
You guys want to come to my house and see my donkey? He kicked me in the head and I can't see straight. And I said, what? Where are we? Nah, we're good, man.
Yeah. Thanks, though. Well, if you want, you go ahead. Yeah, we'll add that.
But yeah, I won't give that the win. But I just wanted to mention him. Give him a little nod.
I'd forgotten about that scene. Thank you. Thank you.
Oh man, that nude rage is good when she throws the gun at the guy's head too. But that section Friday the 13th was so...
What the fuck, you guys?
It's got to be between the two excessive nude scenes.
We'll call it a tie between My Bloody Valentine and Friday the 13th then, or do you want to pick one?
You know, I'd like to do a tie, but I can't handle ties.
You're not into it.
So, geez, which one was longer?
Cumulatively, probably Friday the 13th, but there's something more graphic about
My Bloody Valentine. That nude scene had something to offer other than just excessive humping. So
it's not sexual at all. That's part of what's so strange.
Right,
about
they
it.
start to carry on a conversation, and she's just full frontal nude. So the more WTF goes to Friday the 13th.
All right, I have nominations here for best scares.
You know what else would have been a good WTF was why did you have to have the underground layer? But anyways.
Why, Jason? Why? Okay, we move on to best scare then. The babysitter pokes ghost in the brain.
Good times.
In the Amityville horror. I actually do think the babysitter sequence is probably my favorite sequence in the whole movie. It's pretty well done. The Virgin gets it in Friday the 13th. Like I said, I kind of saw it coming. I knew that she was going to die. I guess I didn't necessarily know how or when she was going to die, but I knew that they wanted me to think that she wasn't going to die, and she did.
Yeah, none of those kids survived.
There's something about the look on her face as the machete goes to her. She seems
but I'm a virgin.
Like, but I did everything right.
I didn't smoke drugs.
I didn't swear. I didn't sleep with the asshole. I helped this guy.
Yeah.
Like... We rescued his kidnapped sister from Jason's lair, and now I just fucking die randomly? Well, shit. For best scare again, he's in the car with the kids in the Hitcher when they have that reveal of Sean Bean in the back seat with the kiddies. I have basically the climactic blood rain sequence of Evil Dead, which is just crazy intense.
Yeah.
Just crazy intense. And, I guess we already talked about the fight in the Crazies. Basically, I think the whole sequence with the pitchforks in the Crazies, where Rada Mitchell, it's not a boo scare. It's just this...
You feel the tension.
The tension
building.
of seeing this guy forking all of these people in the gurneys, and each time he does it, he's getting closer to them. And some of the people are begging for their lives. Some of the people are so crazy they don't seem to give a shit.
There's one guy giggling, wasn't he?
He's giggling the whole time as he's being killed. And she sees her doom coming towards her, and she's so helpless. It's terrifying.
Well,
so, yeah. The Pitchfork and the Crazies, the Blood Rain and Evil Dead, in the car with the kids from the Hitcher, the Virgin Gets It in Friday the 13th, and the Babysitter and the Ghost in the Closet.
I do like a good forking scene.
Yeah, you like forking?
Yeah.
We'll give that one to the Crazies?
Yeah, for the forking scene.
Okay.
I like some hardcore forking.
Special bonus round for WTF, if you will indulge me.
All right.
This is the WTF
bonus round.
Evil Dead edition. All of these WTF moments come from Evil Dead.
I thought there was some stuff missing.
So spoilers, Evil Dead's gonna win.
Excellent.
So we have puked in the face. We have the self-amputation. One of 2 self-amputations that we get to see in the movie.
Oh yeah.
I'm thinking of the one with the roast. Maya ends up cutting off her hand under the Jeep. But I'm talking about her friend, the nurse,
with the electric
who
carving
uses
knife.
the electric carving knife to cut off her arm.
Well done.
We have the nail gun sequence, which is appalling. We have stabbed in the fucking eye with a needle, and then I have just carte blanche the first 10 minutes.
Jeez,
this is like,
oh, fun. Why not throw the last 10 minutes as a nominee too?
Yeah, exactly. So,
wow.
What the fuck, Evil Dead is like? I
I'm
don't even know how to pick one.
I'm tempted to give it a 90-minute tie.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a 90-minute ferocious. What the?
Shit just got real, you guys.
Yeah, it's. I don't know how you pick one on there.
Well, Evil Dead wins. Clearly, this episode of Rank and Review, Evil Dead wins. But if you haven't seen the Crazies, definitely see the Crazies. And I would say, if you're a horror fan, most of these movies are worth a look, but I would encourage you to please seek out the original.
Yeah, for sure. And if you like horror movies, and if you don't hate them because they're remakes, then check out all 6.
Yeah, for sure. And try to watch My Bloody Valentine in 3D. That's all I'm going to say. Thank you so much, brother.
Hey, not a problem. Let's do it again.
Soon. All I'll ever be able to think about now when I think of these films will probably be recording this podcast in the beautiful mountains with my good friend from childhood and forever, Scott Lehman. I hope you guys enjoyed the 79th episode of Rank and Review, and I hope you're going to listen to the 80th episode of Rank and Review, where our returning champion, Matthew Risling, shall return. In the meantime, please send that positive message or positive review on iTunes. That helps me a lot. Or if you could throw me a like at Facebook, that's great for my morale. And please do what you can to spread the word on Rank and Review. We'll talk to you soon. And love from the host and random Canadian, Larry Parsons.